Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 34 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto. We're right at the end of the second canto, chapter 10, last chapter, and it's about the last, less than 20 verses. We're beginning today from verse 42. So let's begin with our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchkalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, verse 42. He, the personality of Godhead, as the maintainer of all in the universe, appears in different incarnations after establishing the creation, and thus he reclaims all kinds of conditioned souls amongst the humans, the non-humans, and the demigods. So, purport. Srila Prabhupada says that the Lord, there's a discussion basically about the Lord appearing in different species. And, that's something we've discussed already quite a bit. Anyway, so Prabhupada discusses it further, how the less intelligent people don't understand him, they deride him. When he appears in these different forms, such is life in the material world. And Prabhupada refers to famous verse, Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, verse 11, Avajanati mam mudha, that the fools deride him, the mudhas deride him when he appears. Manushim tanum ashritam, when he appears in a human form, but then he appears in non-human, fish, hog, tree. Prabhupada says he appears in a tree form and many other forms. Right. So after that verse is quoted, I'm taking that as the second paragraph. And Prabhupada's first point is the Lord is never a product of the material creation. Everything is carried out by his energies, his different energies. And he's never subject to any reactions for any of his activities. He's transcendental to all conceptions of actions and reactions. And he appears in different forms, fish or hog. We may think, this is lower than man, but actually it's his mercy. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead appearing, so it's just his mercy and must be taken like that. And even when he appears in those quote-unquote lower type forms, his potencies don't diminish. So therefore, you can say that there's no difference between Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, and his appearance as a fish or a hog. Yes. But foolish people can't understand. It's just beyond them. And the best they can do is speculate and make a real mess of things. And giving a classic example he's given many times already, and he'll give many times more. Prabhupada says they're like frogs in the well. In the little well, and they can't understand what is the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. It's just, it's not double, it's not 10 times, it's not 100 times. It's just practically infinitely bigger. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, as such, one who is foolish about the transcendental science of the Lord will find it difficult to understand how Lord Vishnu can equally manifest himself in every society of living entities. And verse 43, thereafter, at the end of the millennium, the Lord himself in the form of Rudra, the destroyer, will annihilate the complete creation as the wind displaces the clouds. So the creation here is compared to clouds, and clouds, they come and go in the sky, but when they're displaced, they remain in the same sky in an unmanifest state. Yes. And this creation, maintenance, and distraction, they're nicely explained in Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, verses 19 to 20. Prabhupada quotes them. Yes, the material world is created, then develops nicely, then it stays for some time, then it's destroyed during Brahma's night with no resistance, and at the end of Brahma's night, it's created again. So the foolish conditioned souls who have taken this world to be permanent, they have to learn intelligently why such creation and destruction takes place. The fruit of workers, of course, the fruit of workers, oh boy. They're enthusiastic to make big projects using ingredients supplied by the Lord, but then unwillingly they have to depart. Some big business enterprise, some big political situation. But then they have to go, and that's it. There's nothing they can do when the time of death comes. So to give them hope, the Lord speaks of another nature which is eternal. Wouldn't that just be really nice? Another nature which is eternal. Yeah, and we can just live on there and just do so many things. It's unlimited. So it's encouraging, but one has to do devotional service. And then you can do so many things in devotional service. It's great. And this temporary creation is just to give information to the conditioned souls about that. Yeah. To give a chance for self-realization. It's not for sense gratification. And then if we do devotional service nicely, then we can go to that eternal realm. Then verse 44, the great transcendentalists thus describe the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the pure devotees deserve to see more glorious things in transcendence beyond these features. Yeah. So In other words, there's more to the Lord than just being the creator and destroyer of the material world. Yeah. He's more than that. He has his Ananda feature, his pleasure feature, but that's only understood by pure devotees, but particularly pure devotees. And the fruit of workers can't understand. And of course, Prabhupada says the impersonalists can't understand. Yeah, they just get a slight understanding, the all-pervasiveness of the Lord. It's just a slight understanding of what he is. But anyway, then higher than them are the mystics who see the Lord or want to see him as Paramatma. But then there's the pure devotees who really become absorbed in the Ananda feature by reciprocation of loving service. So therefore the Lord enjoys in Vaikuntha in different rasas. And the devotees qualify themselves for going there. And they enter the kingdom of God. And Bhagavad Gita 18:55 explains that by devotional service, pure devotional service, then you can know him. So that's described in the second paragraph. By development of pure devotional service, one can factually know the Lord as he is, and thus be trained in the bona fide service of the Lord, and be allowed to enter into the direct association of the Lord in so many capacities. And of course, the highest place is Goloka Vrindavan. Yeah. And that's described in Brahma Samhita. Okay, and on to verse 45. Here's the verse. There's no direct engineering by the Lord for the creation and distraction of the material world. What is described in the Vedas about his direct interference is simply to counteract the idea that material nature is the creator. That's an interesting point. And Prabhupada begins the purport by explaining the Vedic direction for the creation, maintenance, and distraction of the material world is this. Yatova imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, yat prayant yabi samvishanti, which means everything's created by Brahman. After creation, everything is maintained by Brahman. And after annihilation, everything is conserved in Brahman. Yes. But the gross materialists who don't know anything about Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan, they conclude that the material nature itself is the ultimate cause. But of course, this is refuted by all Vedic literature. Vedanta philosophy does mention that Brahman is the fountainhead of all creation, maintenance, and distraction. But ultimately, it's referring to Parabrahman, the Supreme Lord. And then the Srimad Bhagavatam, the natural commentary on Vedanta Sutra, says, Janmadyasya yanto and vayadisha tas chartesh vyabhigya swarat, etc. The Lord is the original source of birth, Janma Adi, the original source of birth. So second paragraph, so inert matter is energy with the potential to interact but it has no initiative of its own. And Bhagavatam 111 comments on that the Supreme Brahman is not inert matter. It is supreme consciousness, or he is supreme consciousness, and is independent. Yes. So therefore, inert matter cannot be the ultimate cause. It makes no sense. It really makes no sense. Inert matter cannot be the ultimate cause of creation, maintenance, or distraction of the material world. In certain respects it may appear to be, but it's set into motion by the Lord. He is the background to all creation, maintenance, and distraction. And this is confirmed again in Bhagavad Gita 9:10, which was just referred to actually right just at the beginning of today's session. Yeah. Maya jakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. That this material energy, Krishna says, is working under my direction and is creating all moving and unmoving beings. Right. And so the situation with the material nature is that it can only act, just like a mother can only be a mother after contact with a father. Otherwise, the mother is completely unable in and of herself to give birth. It's the father who's the real catalyst. So therefore, we should understand the material nature produces things, moving, non-moving, whatever, after contact with the Supreme Father. And the material nature, as explained by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada refers in the purport, material nature is like ajagalastana nyaya, the logic of nipples on the neck of a goat. Apparently, I'm not a goat person. So next time I see them, I must have a closer look, actually. But they say that there are these sort of nipple-type pieces of skin on the neck of the goat. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta says, the material nature as the material cause is known as pradhan, and the efficient cause is known as maya. But since it is inert matter, it is not the remote, it is not the remote cause of creation. So, on to the next paragraph, which I'm saying begins after this Chaitanya Charitamrita verse is quoted. Yeah, that's a verse explaining about the position of material nature. So then following that, Prabhupada explains, Karanadakshay Vishnu, Mahavishnu, electrifies matter to put it in motion. And without being, like so many appliances, even big things, which are electrically powered, if there's no electrical power, they're not put into motion. Like now, there's more and more electrical cars being made, but without the electricity, they're just going to be going nowhere. So Prabhupada says the example of electrification is quite appropriate. And he gives a well-known example. Iron becomes red hot through contact with fire. So matter is like the iron, and it's electrified or made red hot by the glance of Lord Vishnu. And only by this electrification is the energy of matter displayed in different actions and reactions. Otherwise, matter would have no actions and reactions. It would just sit there, basically. So therefore, matter, inert matter, is neither the efficient nor the material cause of the cosmic manifestation. Then Prabhupada quotes Lord Kapila, and so Prabhupada explains that verse. The original fire, its flame, its sparks, and its smoke are all one, for fire is still fire, yet is different from the flame. Flame is different from sparks, and sparks are different from the smoke. Yes, well, that's very well put, isn't it? The fire is there in the flame, spark, and smoke, but they're all different. The sparks are compared to the living entities. The flames are compared to the material nature. And we need to know that all of them are effective simply because of being empowered, in the example of the fire, by the quality of the original fire. Without the original fire, then you won't even get smoke, you won't get sparks, and certainly you won't get any flames. So therefore, all material nature, the whole cosmic manifestation, and the living entities are just different energies of the Lord. And those who think that the material nature is the original cause, they're not correct. It has no separate existence without the Lord. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, therefore, setting aside the Supreme Lord as the cause of all causes is the logic of Ajagalastana Nyaya, or trying to milk the nipples on the neck of a goat. The nipples on the neck of the goat may seem like sources of milk, but to try to get milk from those nipples will just be foolish. And on to verse 46. This process of creation and annihilation, described in summary herein, is the regulative principle during the duration of Brahma's one day. It is also the regulative principle in the creation of Mahat, in which the material nature is dispersed. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport talks of different types of creation: Mahakalpa, Vikalpa, and Kalpa. And then Prabhupada explains them, that in the Mahakalpa, the first one, the Lord assumes the first Purusha incarnation with all the potencies of the Mahatattva. The Lord means Karanadakshay Vishnu or Mahavishnu. And also including the 16 principles of creative matter and the instruments, creative matter, and the instruments. Prabhupada says the creative instruments are 11, the ingredients are 5. And all of them are products of Mahat or materialistic ego. So this is called Mahakalpa. all of them are products of Mahat, or materialistic ego. Right, so then Vikalpa means the creation of Brahma and dispersing, utilizing in different ways the different manifestations from the creation of Karanadakshay Vishnu. Yeah, all the earth, water, fire, air, ether, and so on and so forth, utilizing them to create the planetary systems, species, etc. So that's at the beginning of his life, and the creation by Brahma in each day of his life is called Kalpa. So therefore every day of Brahma is called a Kalpa. And there are 30 Kalpas in a month of Brahma. So this is also confirmed by Bhagavad Gita 8:17, famous verse, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aharyad Brahmano Vidu. So Prabhupada gets into a whole description of aspects of time. Prabhupada lists out, sure, he really gets into it actually. So the initial creation of Brahma is a Vikalpa. Each of his days is a Kalpa. And when Mahavishnu breathes out, it's a Mahakalpa. In the upper planets, 1 day there equals 1 year here. But in higher planets, the duration is greater. 4 yugas calculated in terms of the heavenly calendars is 12,000 years, a Divya Yuga. That's 4 yugas, which is 8 billion. Anyway, more than 8 billion of our years. 12,000 heavenly years is a Divya Yuga, or the 4 yugas in our experience. 1,000 yugas, 1,000 Divya Yugas make 1 day of Brahma. Then, so the initial creation of Brahma is Vikalpa. Each of his days is a Kalpa, and when Mahavishnu breathes out, it's a Mahakalpa. So Prabhupada explains that when Shukadev Goswami was asked by Maharaj Parikshit about them, he answered in the Prabhas Kanda of Skanda Purana, which lists out the 30 kalpas of Brahma. And there they are. I mean, I think you can just read through them yourselves. They're just listed out there. But the first one is the Sweta-kalpa. So in the third paragraph, last paragraph, Prabhupada explains that these are just his days. And he has to live 100 of his years, months and years up to 100. So there are many kalpas. And the vikalpas are generated, Prabhupada says, by the breathing of Mahavishnu. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, so the exhaling and inhaling of Vishnu are Mahakalpas, and all these are due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for no one else is the master of all creations. Okay, so now we go on to verse 47, which, devotees, is the last verse in this section. Okay. O king, I shall in due course explain the measurement of time in its gross and subtle features, with the specific symptoms of each. But for the present, let me explain unto you the Padma Kalpa. Right, the Padma Kalpa it's another name for the Sweta Kalpa, which is the first Kalpa. So Prabhupada explains in the purport here, it's important. This is the present Kalpa, is the Varaha Kalpa or Sweta Varaha Kalpa, because Varaha appeared in this Kalpa. So this happened during the creation of Brahma when he was born on the lotus. So it's also called the Padma Kalpa. If you look back at that list of kalpas in the purport of verse 46, then you'll see that the first kalpa is the Varaha Kalpa. It's also called the Sweta Varaha Kalpa, the kalpa of the white Varaha, because he appeared in this kalpa. But it's also the kalpa in which Lord Brahma was sitting on the lotus, so it's also called the Padma Kalpa. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, this is testified by acharyas like Jiva Goswami, as well as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in pursuance of the first commentator, Swami Sridhar. So there's no contradiction between the Varaha and the Padma Kalpa of Brahma. There you go, devotees. So, okay, now we go on to the last section of this 10th chapter, which happens to be the last section in the whole second canto. Yes, so we're going to finish the whole second canto just in the next, I don't know, we'll see, 15 minutes perhaps, or 20. Anyway, let's first of all read through the verses. It's from verse 48 to verse 51. So 4 verses are there, and we call it Shonaka inquires about Vidura. Because Vidura, when we get into the third canto, which I'm assuming we'll make a start today, then at least in the third canto you'll see Vidura plays a very big part, very, very big part, being instructed by Maitreya. Okay, so the verses, 48. Shonaka Rishi, after hearing all about the creation, inquired from Sutta Goswami about Vidura, for Sutta Goswami had previously informed him how Vidura left home, leaving aside all his relatives who were very difficult to leave. And verses 49 to 50 are together. Shonaka Rishi said, let us know, please, what topics were discussed between Vidura and Maitreya, who talked on transcendental subjects, and what was inquired by Vidura and replied by Maitreya. Also, please let us know the reason for Vidura's giving up the connection of his family members and why he again came home. Please also let us know the activities of Vidura while he was in the places of pilgrimage. That's all coming up in the third canto. Oh yes, it's a big thing. And finally, devotees, verse 51, the last verse in the second canto. Sri Sutta Goswami explained, I shall now explain to you the very subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively. All right, so now let's go through this section. 48 to 51, Shonaka inquires about Vidura. So, verse 48. Shonaka Rishi, after hearing all about the creation, inquired from Sutta Goswami about Vidura, for Sutta Goswami had previously informed him how Vidura left home, leaving aside all his relatives who were very difficult to leave. Right. So, of course, we already read in the first canto how Vidura left home, went on pilgrimage before the Battle of Kurukshetra. Then he came back to Hastinapur after the battle, when at that point Maharaj Yudhisthira was ruling. And then Vidura left home again. And when he left home again that second time, then he met Maitreya. And their discussions make up a very substantial part of the third canto. Okay, so there's just a one-sentence purport. The rishis headed by Shonaka were more anxious to know about Vidura, who met Maitreya Rishi while traveling to the pilgrimage sites of the world. Verses 49 to 50, Shonaka said, "Let us know, please, what topics were discussed between Vidura and Maitreya, who talked on transcendental subjects, and what was inquired by Vidura and replied by Maitreya. Also, please let us know the reason for Vidura's giving up the connection of his family members and why he again came home." We just mentioned that. Please also let us know the activities of Vidura while he was in the places of pilgrimage. Right, okay. So, yes, there's a substantial purport here. Prabhupada begins by saying that Sutta was discussing subjects about the creation and destruction of the material world, which, is very important. Prabhupada's already made that point, particularly for the neophyte devotees like ourselves. To hear about the creation and destruction of the material world is essential. But not only that, of course, but at least it is an essential part of what we need to hear about. But Prabhupada says that it seems the rishis were more inclined to hear of higher, more transcendental subjects. So then, Srila Prabhupada, getting into things, makes the point there are two types of men. Those who are too addicted to the gross body and the material world, and those who are more interested in transcendental knowledge. So the Bhagavatam gives facility to both, the materialist and the transcendentalist. And so by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam's descriptions of the Lord's activities in the material world and in the transcendental world, we get equal benefit. So materialistic people, of course, they're more interested in things like physical laws and sometimes forget the glories of the Lord. Well, the materialists, they definitely, these days, are so much more like that. But they need to know, Prabhupada says, they should know that the physical activity, should know that the physical activities and the wonders are initiated by the Lord. Yeah, physical activities and the wonders of physical activities. And Prabhupada gives a nice example of a rose. A rose in a garden grows not by blind physical law, but by the direction of the Lord. And, practical example, an artist may draw the rose very cleverly, but it can't be as good as the real thing. So how can we say that the real rose doesn't come from intelligence? And what to speak of the rose, that's just a very good example anyway. But what about human beings? Human beings. There are artists who can paint human beings even so incredibly accurately that at first glance you think it is the human being. Yeah. Or make a statue like Rodin and others, Michelangelo, their art is just so incredible. Yeah. And who can do statues or paintings like them? Who can do? Nobody can do. They're in a class of their own. So what about making, but they're just copying these material bodies that we have. What about making one which is living? Hare Krishna. That they can't do. So the amount, it takes so much intelligence to make such a painting, perfect painting of a human, or sculpture of a human. But what intelligence does it take to make a living one? That, that question they really cannot answer at all. But then Prabhupada goes on to make the point that the Supreme Consciousness can take care of everything with perfect attention. Then Prabhupada makes the point that more foolish than these materialists are those who claim to be transcendentalists and claim to have supreme all-pervading consciousness. It's crazy. It's crazy. Srila Prabhupada, it wasn't exactly a disciple, but one follower who became a disciple after Prabhupada left this world, disciple of Radhanath Maharaj, Srinathji. He was following one such person who claimed to be a transcendentalist. I won't mention his name. And that man was claiming to be God. And so Prabhupada challenged through the devotee Srinathji that you go back to him and ask him if he can lift Govardhan Hill. And then he'll say no. Then if there's a table in the room, then ask him if he can lift that with one finger. So the devotee went back and asked this man, can you lift Govardhan Hill? The man said, that's ridiculous, because he was ridiculous. And then the Srinathji said, well, can you lift this table? And the man said no. And then Srinathji understood there's no question of him being God. So hearing Srimad Bhagavatam will also help them. It will, or it can open their eyes to the fact that claiming to have supreme consciousness doesn't mean you have supreme consciousness. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying The rishis of Naimisharanya, however, were above the gross materialists and the false transcendentalists, and thus they were always anxious to know the real truth in transcendental matters as discussed by authorities. Right. Okay, so now the final verse of the whole second canto, verse 51 of this 10th chapter of the second canto, Sri Sutta Goswami explained, I shall now explain to you the very subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively. So Prabhupada gives a purport here, shortish. Any question that people put, that people ask, it can be answered by quoting authority. And that satisfies sane people, Prabhupada says. And this is the system even in law courts. A lawyer gives evidence, trying to establish a point in a case. He just refers to a previous judgment in the same courts, and generally speaking, that'll be accepted. So that's the parampara system. And learned authorities follow it without manufacturing rubbish interpretations, Prabhupada says. And Prabhupada then quotes Brahma Samhita verse 1, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadya Adya Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. And Prabhupada concludes by saying, let us all obey the Supreme Lord whose hand is in everything without exception. And there you go, devotees. That is the end of the second canto. Hare Krishna, devotees. So that concludes Canto 2. And we will continue on with Canto 3 shortly. Yes, we'll be waiting for you there in Canto 3. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.